Welcome back to the channel. Today's episode we'll be doing a brick pattern cutting board. Now this will be a little different from some of the others that are out there because this will be all end grain. I'll be using both walnut and cherry for this build. So we started off with some rough sawn walnut here, and so I'm just cutting these down to length. I like to do this before going to the jointer and thickness planer, so that if there are any big warps or bows in the wood, I'm not trying to straighten a 6-foot board when I only need to straighten a 2-foot board. So, and then here's the cherry, so doing the same thing with the cherry, cutting it down to the lengths and getting one side good through the jointer. And here I got my 6-inch planer and just getting the boards down to thickness and getting that second side smooth and good to go. Now alternatively, if you do not have this equipment in your shop, you can buy good 4 sides or finished 4 sides lumber at most stores, or get them to finish it for you. So the first part of the process is pretty straightforward. So we've ripped all of the boards down to 1.5 inch widths, and then ripped some 1/4 inch strips out of the cherry, and then we're putting those together. Now the one thing to note, right at the top, you've got to take one of those 1.25 inch pieces of walnut and cut that down to 3/4 of an inch. So that'll help with the brick pattern later on in the build. So here I've done the glue up, and I'm doing this in 2 pieces because I do want to run this through my 6-inch thickness planer to get the walnut and the cherry down to the exact same dimensions. If you had a bigger thickness planer, or we're doing this in another manner, then you could definitely do the glue up all in one. So here I've got both those pieces now glued together, and I'm just removing all the glue squeeze out from that, and then we'll start cutting it down, ready to rotate it and put it in the position for the end grain. So here I'm truing up one side, just making a few short passes, trying to take as little off as possible. And then here I'm measuring for the thickness that I want the finished cutting board to be. So I chose just under 1.5 inches, I believe, on this particular cutting board. And now I'm cutting those strips. So this is going to make the small pieces of cherry, which will end up being sort of the vertical small individual pieces on the brick pattern. So now that we've got these, we can start to set those up, and now you'll start to see how once we flip these on edge, we're going to take every other piece and rotate it front to back. So you'll see where that one piece that we cut down from 1.5 inches to 3/4 is going to give us that offset and start creating that brick pattern. So here we've got the brick pattern, things are starting to look good, but we are missing the one piece of cherry that is going to separate the pieces. So here I've laminated a couple of boards together. I didn't have a board long enough, and I'm ripping these down to the same height or thickness, I guess, that the cutting board is going to be. And then going over to the bandsaw and trimming those down to make all of those pieces that are going to fit in between to make up and finalize the brick pattern. So this probably isn't the ideal way to do this, but at this point you've got one smooth side and you've got one sort of rough cut side from the bandsaw that you need to clean up. And so to clean this up, I ran it through my thickness planer with a board underneath it to sort of give it a little bit of height, so I wasn't putting through just a 1/4 piece, and it also stiffened it up a little bit. Worked out pretty well for me. However, I would probably recommend using a drum sander or something like that if you had that available to you. So now we can start just placing those in between, and now you can really start to see that brick pattern come to life. Now again, because of the way we've cut the wood, everything that we're seeing facing up right now is end grain. So we don't have a mix of side grain or otherwise in there. So when I sort of skew this up or straighten this out, now you'll be able to see really that brick pattern come to life. So here we're doing the glue up of that, and the most critical portion here is to make sure that we get that as straight as possible, so that everything is lined up. Now I used a lot of glue, and with the number of joints that are in this cutting board, I don't mind wasting a little bit of glue. And the easiest way I've found to clean up excess glue is with the belt sander. And so here we'll finally sort of start to get a look at what the finished product will start to look like. So now it's back to the table saw to straighten up and square up all of the edges. And again, I'm being very careful here to try to take off as little as possible, and to just get everything flush. I don't want to waste or take away from the board. Again, trying to maintain that symmetry from all sides of the board. So after the first round of sanding, with any of the cutting boards, it is important to start pouring a little bit of water on it and get it a little wet. This will raise all of the hairs in the wood, and then you can go back once it dries out and sand those off again. And once you've done this once or twice, you don't have to do it again. And then when you do get your cutting board wet to wash it, it won't kind of feel furry. The other really satisfying part of this part in the project is you actually get to see what it's going to start to look like with some finish on it. So here we're getting into the finish sanding phases, just going up to some higher grits, and then using some salad bowl oil finish for this particular project, and just pouring it on and spreading it around with a plastic card, and letting it soak in as much as it can. And I'll typically do a couple different applications of the oil. Just as long as the wood is still soaking it in, I will keep applying it. So here you have the finished product. So I'm really happy with the results. It is full end grain, and I love the way the look of the cherry and the walnut go together. So this is it's a lot of different joints, and it does look quite spectacular once you get it all glued together. Definitely get a lot of questions from people who see it, wondering how the heck you did it and how you did that many glue ups. But hopefully with the process that I've shown you, you've got an idea of how to tackle this yourselves, and that it isn't that challenging. You just have to be careful of what you're cutting and make sure you got the orientations of the boards in the right direction. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and please consider subscribing. There's a lot more content coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching.